qu'est-ce qui fait 296 pages, pèse 1,2 kg et a gagné le Fauve Jeunesse à Angoulême. Le Prince et la Couturière, c'est une bande dessinée de Wang qui raconte l'histoire d'un prince et d'une couturière, et j'ai l'impression de déjà être en train de me répéter parce que ça a été l'un de mes plus gros coups de cœur de l'année passée et que je te l'ai déjà présenté 2 fois. Mais pour cette 3e apparition, je ferme ma boîte à camembert. À la place, je vais laisser l'autrice s'exprimer parce que j'ai eu l'immense chance de pouvoir la rencontrer lors de sa dédicace à l'excellente librairie jeunesse 1000 pages à Vincennes. Elle m'a parlé de sa vision de la littérature young adulte et du fait de créer des récits queer sans les labelliser ainsi, et tu vas voir, c'est passionnant. En piste!
My name is Wang. I'm a cartoonist and I do both writing and drawing. My first book was called Koko Be Good. That's maybe not translated into French, but my second book is called In Real Life, and that's co-written with Cory Doctorow. He's one of the founders of the blog Boing Boing, and he's also a young adult author. And my third book is The Prince and the Dressmaker, which is about a young prince who secretly likes to wear dresses and hires a dressmaker to make those dresses. There was always like a couple different ideas I wanted to do. One of them was related to like fashion, maybe something about a character that liked to make clothing. I thought that that would be like a nice idea for a story. And then separately, I wanted to do something relating to gender identity, done in a very fun and positive way. I didn't want it to be tragic, and I was thinking about like something like a Disney movie. That's something that like felt like a fairy tale. I think thinking along those lines, it kind of made sense. When I was thinking about fairy tales, I thought, oh, maybe it could be about like a prince or a princess, and then the clothing angle kind of came in, and I just kind of figured that they were the same story. Instead of being about clothing as like something just kind of for fashion, it could be something that was about wearing clothes that made you feel more like who you are, who you really are. And I just thought that this would be like a really fun story, and everything kind of came together like pretty quickly. I wanted the book to feel like it could be sort of timeless, that you could at any point sort of read the story and sort of recognize something about the character in yourself, or you know, in your own life, maybe like someone you know. And I felt like maybe putting labels on it might date it a little bit, because like I think our vocabulary about a lot of this stuff changes pretty quickly, and I wanted it to feel like something that like your parents could read and they could understand without being too confused by it, or like even scared by it. And I wanted something for like kids to be able to read too, in a way that felt very safe. You know, because I feel like sometimes before you're able to admit something to yourself also, like you can, these things can be sort of, I think kind of stressful to think about, to even like think about words being like attached to yourself. And so something that felt a little more like neutral on labels, I think is a way for readers to connect with the story on their own terms without sort of like a lot of just like vocabulary or like concepts like being too much all at once. Yeah. I didn't think too hard about the historical aspect, because I knew that there's just not really a way for me to know what it would have been like back then. Like even if I read a lot of history books, I kind of just felt like I wanted to tell a story that that readers now can understand. And yeah, like I think I wanted to focus on just the relationship between the two characters as like something that felt like a real friendship, or you know, like a real romance, like the things that they have in common, you know, the things that they're nerdy about together, and things like that. I think people kind of at any point in their life can relate to. It's like, oh, like my best friend and I, like we have these things in common and we share them, and we feel this way about each other. If I thought about things that way, then it was pretty easy to write, and I didn't have to worry too much about what's ahistorical. Frances is the character who we see the story through her eyes. We kind of start with Frances, like we don't meet Sebastian until a little later in the story. And I feel like that way, even though Sebastian's story sort of takes the focus, Frances is able to kind of bookend the story, like you kind of understand kind of where she's coming from first, and then you sort of like get introduced to Sebastian, and then that way you don't really lose her throughout the story. And I think that ends up kind of balancing everything, where you're sort of following her journey also. Her story is definitely something that I can relate to, just because it's a lot about creativity and being an artist. And I think, yeah, I just wanted to write a story that allowed the artist to be celebrated a little bit. I think a lot of stories like this might write Frances as someone who is working too hard, or maybe like should focus on other things, but I think it would be really great if both of the main characters are sort of like supportive of this like artistic path, career path, and that in the end she really succeeds. Initially, I wasn't thinking too much about who the characters were supposed to be. Like they were adults because I'm an adult. But then the more I thought about it and talked about it with some other people, it just felt like the story is about self-discovery. So then it kind of made sense for the characters to be a little younger, because when you're discovering things about yourself for the first time, when you're trying things for the first time, it feels so much more intense and it feels so much more emotional. It didn't change anything about the story, it just made everything more heightened. And I felt like it made sense as a YA book, because it is about all those first discoveries and like, you know, like young love, and you know, it has that like sort of fairy tale Disney movie thing. You know, I felt like, oh, if you enjoyed watching like The Little Mermaid or like Frozen or something, like you could probably enjoy reading this book. And so it made sense as something that adults could get into, but also kids at the same time, and that's very much like a YA thing. I think maybe one thing that has stood out to me is that a lot of parents are kind of interested in the gender identity aspects, but young readers are pretty open about that stuff already. Like they're not as concerned about it, and so when they read the book, they just find it fun, and it's something that feels more natural to them, you know. And I think that's like a really nice thing to get out of a book like that. Yeah, I have a new book coming out in America this fall, in September, called Stargazing, and it should come out in France sometime after. It's about two Chinese American girls who they're 11 years old, and they're best friends, but they're also very different. So they kind of have to deal with the sort of conflicts that come with just being very different kinds of people who are also very, very close. And it's like a simple friendship story, but also very emotional and very personal. So it's very different from my other books, but I hope there's the things that made my other works, I guess, like appealing to people is here in this book too. If one book did well, then I know that that kind of book will do well, but then I'm never sure if like I do a different kind of book, if that's gonna also connect to readers. And so so in that sense, like I'm always a little nervous, but so far the feedback on Stargazing has been pretty good. So I finished the book, so I've done everything I could do. So, you know, we'll find out, yeah.